Welcome everyone to our panel today. Our panel is called Women, Wisdom and Wins in Tech. And so we are surrounded by some amazing women who are leading change in the tech industry. My name is Sonya Barlow and I'm the founder of LMF Network CAC. We're a global not-for-profit social enterprise focusing on enabling and educating women and minoritized groups into tech business entrepreneurship. Alongside that, I'm a diversity and inclusion expert, TEDx speaker, and a soon-to-be published author with my book coming out in October 2021. I am extremely humbled and proud to be leading our panel today. I will invite every guest to kindly introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about yourself, what it means to be a woman in tech, and maybe one of your wins, and then we'll start our discussion. So Caroline, can I please ask you to go first?
Of course, no pressure. My name is Charlene Vaughan, and I run BD and commercial, ultimately growth, at Innovate Finance. And Innovate Finance is the industry body for fintech. So we sit at the center of using tech to innovate financial services. But what most excites me about the space is the fact that it's blending into every other sector, and the lessons that we've learned and how you innovate in a big regulated industry transcends industry. So I'm excited for what those learnings will look like as we move into other segments.
Perfect, thank you. Simone?
Hi, thanks Sonia. Great to be here today. My name's Simone. I'm the founder of Northern Power Women, Northern Power Futures, and now a power platform. I have been trying to drive a campaign to accelerate gender equality from the North. My passion is about phenomenal kick-ass role models, including the wonderful Beckie, who is part of the Northern Power Women community and also shortlisted in this year's awards. But for me, I feel like a bit of an imposter in the tech panel, but for me it's about absolutely signposting to awesome role models, awesome campaigns, like many of you here on this panel. So great to be here, great to be part of the conversation. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And so Beckie, we're going to go to you next because Simone kindly already did a quick intro.
Oh, thank you, Simone. That means so much. Thank you. And thank you for having me here today. So I'm Beckie. I am co-founder and CEO of an organisation called Tech Returners. So we support people who have had established technology careers previously and have had career breaks for many, many reasons and looking to reskill and reignite their careers in technology, and we support them in doing so. I'm also co-founder of a community group called Women in Tech North. We've organically grown over the near enough 5 years now, and pleased to say we're the third largest community women in tech group globally, which we're really, really proud of. And also I'm mum to Ethan, who's 7, and Emmy, who is 16 months.
Thank you. Jane, would you like to go next?
Yeah, fine. So I'm so happy to be here. I'm an award-winning entrepreneur, a best-selling author and keynote speaker. And in addition to that, I'm also a managing director at Accenture's Applied Cybersecurity's service division. I'm a director at Tech Talent Academy, so I'm running the women in cybersecurity there. And I also have my own company. So for me, what I do is I work with women who are in male-dominated industries and help them to build their careers or their businesses. So yeah, I'm really passionate about visibility and voice and getting yourself out there. And I'm so, so happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And Charlene?
Hi, it's really exciting to be here with such awesome women. So I'm Charlene, and I'm the founder and CEO of an organisation called Coding Black Females. We're really, really passionate about getting more Black women into the tech industry and making sure that Black women are visible in the tech industry as well. It's a really energetic and exciting community growing on a daily basis, and we're international now as well, which is fantastic. We currently have launched a coding boot camp with an organisation called Neo Enterprise, which is running in the West Midlands. And we're also doing the Visible in Tech campaign on social media to get more Black women on a platform, really. Really exciting. So glad to be here with all of you.
Oh, thank you so much. So Charlene, I'm going to direct the first question to you, because obviously you have stated really prominently that you want to get more Black women into tech, and obviously in October it is Black History Month, and so we are celebrating the great changes that Black community have created. But given that there are such few Black women in tech, you know, what got you started in technology industry, and what really helped you to make the choices that you are leading today, and now you've ended up running this kind of coding bootcamp?
So I actually entered the industry. I wrote my first line of code when I was around 10 years old. So I discovered a BBC microsystems computer at school and started coding on that. And then my parents bought me computers at home and I got to code on those as well. I was really lucky in that both of my parents both run companies. So my dad runs a tech company, my mum runs a training organization. So as I was growing up, I used to write code, build computers, and deliver training to people to develop their confidence and to learn new tech skills. I always say that my root's very traditional. So I went on to do a maths degree, didn't really know what to do after that, decided to do a computer science one because it felt quite fitting, and then started in a graduate role as a software developer. When I think about my route, I always think, oh, how did I end up here? But when I tell people about it, it seems really clear that that's the route that I was going to take. I was very lucky that it was always presented to me and seemed like an industry that I could enter. The reason that I created Code in Black Females was sort of 10 years into my career, or 8 years in, I had realized I hadn't met any other Black women who were software developers. When I created it, I just wanted to meet other Black women in the tech industry and see what they were doing, share resources, hear about their experiences. And over time, we've really grown into a community of over 1,000 women in the UK and internationally as well. And, you know, we run a lot of events. We do events every 2 weeks to either teach new skills or to share ideas. We have panel discussions. We started the Coding Bootcamp after running a workshop at a conference. And following that, the people that run the conference said, you know, let's do a bootcamp together. So we started one, and we had over 300 applications, and now we're training 50 women to become software developers. It's a really exciting initiative, and the energy that we see, even running it remotely, from the women who are learning, it's absolutely fantastic. It's definitely one of our proudest accomplishments. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's super interesting. And actually, when I started LMF Network, it was really similar. So we only started about 2 years ago, and it was because I was in the tech industry. But unfortunately, in my companies, I didn't really see anyone who looked or felt like me. And once I transitioned from my first company to my second, I didn't even get a leaving card or a leaving lunch. And I just thought that was the saddest thing in the world. And so, you know, I always say that kind of bad times make for good opportunities, or kind of, you know, gray areas is what most businesses start from. So really, really inspiring stories. And we'll get back to unpacking a little bit more after we kind of meet the other panelists. Simone, you mentioned in your introduction that you felt a bit like an imposter. So I'd love to direct the question back to you. One, why do you feel like an imposter? And two, how did you get into tech? And what kind of, you know, were there similar areas or examples that kind of led you to creating Northern Power Women?
I think it goes way back, a long decades ago. God, I feel like ancient now, but I started my career in the military. So I started in the Royal Navy, and it was in those times before women could go to sea. And ultimately I ended up kind of working my way through, and I eventually went to sea as an officer. But whilst I was at sea, there was one laptop and one gigantic mobile phone in the whole of the ship's company, which is about 240 people. And I suppose you don't think of it till you reflect back, do you? But I kind of went, well, you know what? I'm resourceful. I'm also really impatient. So I taught myself how to use it, and it was on the advent of going from what was WordPerfect. Now I really am sounding old, into like the Windows kind of system. And so I kind of taught myself. And a couple of years later, when I left the Navy, I ended up going to the hospitality events industry. And everywhere I went, there was technology. And I was always fascinated about how does this make my job, my role, the connectivity, the community easier to kind of navigate. And more importantly, how can I interfere in more stuff? And how can we join more people together? So I think if I kind of fast forward now, so it's always been a passion of mine to make, always been sort of fascinated by and nosy and inquisitive, I suppose. And then coming to where I am now, 5 and a bit years ago, setting Northern Power Women up. For the first sort of 3.5 years, it was myself, it was me on my own, and a couple of social media accounts, which ultimately grew the community. And then about 6 months ago, in fact longer than that, probably just before Christmas, I started thinking about how can we better serve and grow this community, because I don't want to get in the way. I'm always passionate that when you bring great humans together, that magic that can happen, you know, and one person can talk to somebody else and they can help support what they're trying to do, whether it's through you know, coding Black females, whether it be about finance, whether it be returning to work. I'm always passionate about joining those dots, and so I found myself now in this space of building this power platform, which is designed to do exactly that, joining those dots, connecting people with opportunities. It's all about opportunity, but it's built on the kind of ethos of that human nature of, you know, paying it forward, being generous and making a difference. So I think I've come the other way around, and I've almost tried to create a virtual version of me, God help us, to be able to better serve. And I think this period that we are in at the moment, I think has really helped kind of grow that community. So we're now having conversations with people, probably like we all are, aren't we, like this, but globally. But I wanted to find something that I could, I say, better serve the community that I kind of taken responsibility for and grown, really. So yeah, so I do feel like a bit like an imposter, because not having sort of started as that's not where I am. But now I'm in all manner of different conversations with, I didn't know there were so many different types of developer. So I'm going back to that day when I unpacked the kit on the warship. I'm now unpacking that knowledge in my head every day and learning new stuff about tech. But what I've learned is, you know, the growth of female and Black, Asian, minority ethnic representation is growing. It's still obviously nowhere near enough, but that's why we need the great organisations that are all on this screen today, so that we can share. Because often if you can't see what's going on out there, then you don't know how to get involved. So that's sort of led me to my route, is to be able to signpost to fantastic people and organisations that you were all driving.
Thank you so much. And I just want to kind of really unpack the point here. And for those who are listening, I don't think that you should consider yourself an imposter for anything. You've just proven that your skills are transferable. And so given the unfortunate circumstances that we are now in globally, with recession and with job losses, it's just another kind of powerhouse, another story that we can see of skill transferring, and, you know, the diversity that is required in technology. I'm going to take the question on to you, Jane. So what is the best part of being a woman in tech? And equally, having mentioned that you run your own kind of, you know, company, and at the same time you work for Accenture, what are some of the skills of the future that those who are listening and those that are learning should be really getting involved in, especially if they want to join tech?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting listening to the stories so far, because my background was actually in woven textile design. So I went from being in as a designer, as a creative, as an artist, to like building a company that actually really specialized in hacking. So it was like hacking systems and things like that. And that was aside from being a designer, that was my first kind of like entrepreneurial kind of start. Then I went into building this security company because I just thought it sounded really cool. And in 1997, when I started it, over like 22 years ago, it was feasible. It was like really interesting in terms of tech. It was either that or AI, but AI was too new. So for me, I've kind of had this like journey of being in tech and being interested in tech, really because it's dynamic. You know, I like change, and I think we as women do really, really well with change. This comes really natural to us. You know, our bodies are built for change, you know, as mums or not as mums, we're just so well equipped for change. So I think for me, I like that transformation. I like the dynamic, you know, that comes really with tech. And, you know, when I look at, you know, I've worked in cyber for 22 years, but when I look at tech, it is so massive. I mean, cyber is really diverse anyway. There's so many different jobs that you can do in it. But tech is so massive. And for me, I look at it really as an artist. it's a tool, it's your paintbrush. So how cool is that to be able to know how these things work and then go off and implement or use it as a tool to do whatever you want. So I really view it as a power tool. It's such a power tool for women to have, whether that's learning how to code or getting involved in another aspect. But for me, in terms of like the future, one of the most important things is actually being able to communicate. So it's having those soft skills, and often we talk about these things, but it really is, because you've got to be able to learn fast, and really, there's no excuse for anyone not to be able to do that. Learn fast. Technology is moving really, really fast. So the faster that you can learn things and adapt and pick up things, the more able you're going to be for the future. And then you need to know how to communicate. You need to know how to position yourself. You need to, whether that's because you're going to build your own companies or work in a company and position yourself in a company with stakeholders. So you need to know how to position yourself, how to market yourself, how to sell something really well. These are like the foundation skills, and they are so important. And then, of course, you've got to be able to problem solve. And again, I think we are really, really well equipped as women to be able to think out of the box and to do these things. So this is very much our time. And I really believe that as women, we have to support other women and come together. There's enough for everyone, so we've got to get rid of this whole kind of lack of and scarcity. There is enough, and we can do it, and we can do a better job when we come together and support one another.
Thank you so much. For those listening, just to remind you, the 3 skills we need to progress, to enter, to really promote ourselves in tech is 1, to stay dynamic, 2 is to communicate, and 3 is to problem solve. I'm so glad that you have been able to bring those skills to the forefront alongside the technical skills that Charlene's mentioned beforehand, just to showcase the diversity that already exists within technology. Because often when I'm talking to especially young professionals, and we'll get to kind of return to work mothers in a second, they find that because they're not technical in tech, they can't enter the industry. And kind of please do chime in, but I definitely think that whole misconception is sometimes why women don't feel confident enough to jump in, because it seems that tech is I personally think tech is a lifestyle, and it's, every industry is a technology industry. I don't really see how just a industry is just tech, because we're using tech every day. So I'd love to know what you all think. I think, Jane, if you want to go first.
Absolutely. We're all technologists. The women that are coming through now, people are all technologists because of these things. So they are using it. And, when I've got 3 kids, my kids are older. So 2 of them have just started uni. The other one's done uni. But they're all messing with technology. I've got 2 boys and a girl. My daughter she's been coding since she was 8. And it's not because I forced her or anything like that. She's just been naturally really interested. And out of the 3 kids, she was the one who was most interested in it, along with my eldest one. My middle one doesn't. So yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with what you said.
And Simone, and then we'll definitely go to Caroline.
I'm a firm believer that every role has a tech role in it, and especially as we've seen as we navigate this whole COVID, I think we've seen people innovate in new ways. And we launched a report last week, a leveling up report, and that was based on a series of like 1,000 hours of what started off as meetings with sort of senior leaders and influencers, 1 to check in, and 2 to go, right, what do we need to crack on with, or in brackets, what mischief can we cause? And I think one of the quotes that came out of it was, how do we innovate ourselves through this, because it's not going back. I'm not a big fan of the build back better. It's a bit like, how do we go forward? And how can we, whether or not it's how we work, the hours that we work, or the style that we work, it's not about going back into a world of presenteeism in offices and stuff like that. So I think there's different things around technology and innovation, but I think there is a real opportunity. There's an amazing woman over in the Tees Valley area who has gone from and had gone from film directing into the world of green and green energy, and now has over this period found a way to recycle wind turbine engines. Stuff like that, is phenomenal. Plus being served a flood, an arson attack, and a rape threat on one of her staff. It's and I'm not making light of that, but it's just this. It's when you hear about the positive out of that story, about that's where I think you can have a perception that tech is purely coding or is purely X, where, like you say, I think I agree with Sonya, it can be, it is a lifestyle, it's the way you work, but I think we're all, I'm learning new skills every single day right now.
Yeah, thank you. Caroline, we haven't heard from you, and then we'll definitely go to Beckie.
No, I really do want to touch on a few things that were teased out. I think tech is a way of thinking. I think it's a cultural way of approaching problems, is what I just wanted to draw upon what Jane said. And also I want to talk about more the imposter syndrome, yes, but more, listen, I want to work backwards. Apparently we're going to live 100-year life, which means everybody, not only women on this group, every single person, if the last 6 months haven't taught us this, which is you're going to have to change and you're going to have to adapt. So if you have let's call it tech-minded way of approaching problem sets, that in and of itself will help you solve problems. Today we call it tech, but I think tech is an enabler for problem solving. And I started off this conversation with, I happen to be in the fintech space, which is how tech's innovating financial services. But the most interesting part of that is how that transcends with the way we work, society. And I'll give a few examples, which is, okay, how does tech enable me to be financially well? Well, I can invest differently than I was before because it unbundles it. I can save differently. I can take out loans differently. But what does that actually do societally? That helps more people have wealth creation. That helps people come out of not being able to have money. So it leads me on to my next point, which is, to say you're going into tech is such a broad statement, and it requires skill sets of all different likes. So we talk about coding. I think I studied journalism. I loved storytelling and macro, and that couldn't be more applicable to my career. It happens to have led me to something that is incredibly newsworthy, yes, but more it's a synergistic of how it all fits together, and that happens to be my skill set in tech. Other people's skill sets are different, but what I'm trying to say is that you need a lot of different skill sets at the table. We all talk, by proxy of this, we all talk about diversity. It's not always what we look like that makes the diversity, it's what's going on inside and how we approach problems. And I do think it's important to talk about that. So at Innovate Finance, I mean, we strongly feel that by the creation of cultures, and in our world, it's financial services meet tech, you bring certain way of thinking together. So build better, not back, but build better in doing so. I think you have to have a future pipeline of people who understand how to operate in the world problems that we have today. So that doesn't mean a single way, it's about critical thinking. And if you talk to top universities, they're not teaching disciplines purely anymore. They want, and as an American, I would say this, that a liberal arts education is good because it gets a well-rounded perspective on history, disciplines, etc. But I do think it will take people forward, which is to better understand how to approach the interconnectivity of things. And so I absolutely, one of my favorite things I've learned in fintech, so I've started my career at kind of more traditional financial services at a company called Bloomberg. I came into the spot because I got excited. I'm from California, but moved to London, and it started to become a tech scene and emerging of people wanting to create businesses, a state of mind. But my favorite thing I've learned in 6 years is that 6 years ago, nobody was an expert. I had to explain what blockchain was to my parents. He told me, my dad said, I think you haven't explained it because I don't understand what you've just said and I haven't heard about it enough. Now, I'm getting relatives sending me stuff anytime it relates to fintech. So this moral to me of that story is everybody can become an expert in a problem set that's relevant in a short period of time. And that to me is empowering because there will be people that land grab to claim that that space was a known. If you look at the sustainability space right now, there's a lot of people who are experts who have been around for 30 years, but they weren't talking about this 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So everybody has an opportunity to affect change is the positive narrative I'll take out of that. There's no such thing as imposter syndrome. If, as I say to kids when we talk about FinTech for schools or students, you are the one who understands this better than us. Your brain is better at this because you're native to digital. Your way of thinking is the future customer way of thinking. And every generation has said that. But I think it's really important that we're no longer living in a hierarchy. We're living in a very flat problem solving. And boy, are there enough problems to solve. So let's not get caught up in who's solving them, but how we're solving them.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. And this is both for yourself and for Beckie. But Beckie, I guess because we haven't heard from you, we're great to start. Obviously, you deal with those who are returning to work, which is a massive market. And unfortunately, we know from stats and just from being in the industry that a lot of women are not able to get back into technology because maybe they don't have the desired skill set or they don't have the confidence. And at the same time, technology is moving so fast. It's very dynamic, which was, a term used before, and it's a great term. What are some of the, I don't want to say challenges, I want to say, what are some of the opportunities that you see for those who have gone and who are carers and who have raised kids? Because that is a full-time job and you're learning so many skills that you can transfer anyway. So it'd be great to hear from your side, what is some of the opportunities you see? And then I'd want to invite Caroline back into the conversation because I know in the background, many of you here have kids running around. It's just the norm.
Yeah, just on that point, I think in terms of the challenges and the opportunities, I do feel it's more that the returners, women returners and men returners, have these skills, they have their experiences. Where we fall out is that the company is not providing accessible opportunities for them to come back in. And I think I've got to hammer that home because there's a wealth of talent looking to return to technology. To give you a statistic, for a BBC programme run last year, we had 23,000 women apply for 16 places on a programme looking to return to technology. And I get asked day in, day out, there's not enough women in tech. Where can we find the women in tech? Need more diversity in tech. And I'm sure, Charlene, that you get the same questions for you, but there absolutely is. There's massive amount of talent. We just need to create those accessible routes back into technology. I think in terms of why tech returners exists and the opportunities is, I suppose until I became a mum myself 7 years ago, I underestimated the whole challenges of returning to work. At that time, I sat on a leadership team of 13, being the only woman around there, then became the only parent. And that's what sort of led me to co-found Women in Tech North. And from the conversations I was having, it became more and more apparent that there was a lack of support for people returning to tech after a career break. The statistic is that 56% of women leave their technology careers at mid-senior. So yes, it's really important to focus on the younger generation, but if we don't retain our talent, what we'll just do is have like a leaky bucket effect, that we're sort of ploughing this talent in and they'll all fall out. So hence Tech Returners exists, and I'm pleased to say over the past near enough 3 years we've enabled 52 people back into technology, 48 of them being women, which we're exceptionally proud of. But I think it's in terms of the opportunities, and on our first immersion week, as we call it, we do a personal development exercise talking about where you are now and what does success look like to you. And a lot of the returners turn around and say, well, what skills can I put there? What achievements can I put in there? And I always give the example that before 9 o'clock in the morning, I've probably done mediation, I've done negotiation, I've done influencing, I've done time management, and that's just getting 2 young children out the door. And that's a wealth of transferable skills to give to any organisation. And I agree with the points that were said before around technical skills. Yeah, great, we're all using tech all the time, but it's the value of, I call them real skills. I think soft skills undermines them so much. I think it's the wealth of real skills and transferable skills that these women and men have whole heaps to offer organisations. And I think this is where it's going to move forward. And I've got to say, given the pandemic, I always have to look at the positives in every situation. I think it will bring more awareness to the returner market. because people who have unfortunately maybe made furloughed or lost their jobs have got now gaps in the CVs, and there'll be more empathy to returners that, you know, there is a life after a gap in the CV. You know, there's not just a gap. They do volunteering, they work on personal projects, they've homeschooled children, which is a skill in itself at the end of the day. And I just think now, there'll be more opportunities than ever to look at the returner market and support people with wealth of talent to come back into technology.
Thank you so much. Any other kind of mother or carer would like to chime in really quickly, and then we'll start wrapping up? So I know Caroline does, and then we'll kind of go around the room in case anybody else does too.
Thank you. I love what you just said there, because it harked back the fact that you were the first one to be a parent. I think there's something here on we're all as humans trying to be most effective with how we utilize our effort. So when you're trying to do that, you go to places that will understand you. And so you look for places that may have had something like that happen before. So you have a maternity policy, a paternity policy, you understand it. Beckie, what you just described is probably having to teach a culture what it means to balance it. And that's a secondary job. When we look at the kind of wider cultural movement on diversity more widely, it's the onus on whose job it is to define those rules. When it's put on the person going through it, that puts a lot of onus onto them to take on that secondary education role. So I just wanted to speak to that. The reason I've been coming on and off, I apologize, it's not because I'm inept at Zoom, which could be true as well. I have a sick 3-year-old in the other room, and so I'm trying to look peaceful while telling him to go back to sleep. It's those sort of skill sets that you say are the real skills, which is just as negotiating. But I don't like to fall back onto just the kind of, I think it's a little alienating to just go into the motherhood or non-motherhood, because I think it's not about that. I want to go back to the diversity of opportunity and the diversity of people at the table who think about things in an interesting way. And again, COVID has meant that just financially, more of the world's in debt. Like you said, there's an empathy to the fact that there's employment gaps in things. From a societal point of view, there's more than enough problems to solve, which is what I want to come back to again. And it's such a vital time for us to be thinking and having the most people at the table. Beckie, I want to pick up on your list, which is everybody says optically they want to have more women on their boards, more women at the table. I think there's a lot of systemic problems that you have to look at as well. So start with where the money comes from. So if just in fintech, if you look at the venture capital side of the table, this is primarily in the early stage, but up to whatever private equity. Well, less than 1% of people on the other side of that table are women making the decisions. And my analogy always goes back to Saturday Night Live. Tina Fey, this is an American reference, but Tina Fey was one of the first women writers, and you got onto Saturday Night Live by the number of laughs around the table. So when she was doing funny jokes that weren't relevant to those other people around the table, they didn't land, which meant she didn't go forward. That's my analogy for if there's no women on the other side of the table or people that understand your way of thinking to invest in you, you're not going to get the laughs on the show. You're not going to get investment. And money does drive the opportunity as well. So apply that as you will. But Jane, you were nodding. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with that. And that's why it's just like, fine, if you can't get ahead, go create your own. You're capable. You know, it's just like nothing. There are no barriers. Again, thanks to technology. You can start a business with absolutely next to nothing. You know, I've been a business owner for over 20 years. And it's just like the cost to actually set up a business 20 years ago, it was very, very different to what it is now. You know, you can do it with next to nothing. You just got to sell. You know, so what is the problem that needs solving? Go out there, create the product or the service and sell it. And I know it sounds really simple, but so many women I find are trapped. And it's, you know, when we talk about confidence, this is just how they see risk. You know, so my book, although it's kind of like specialized for security, is, I mean, anyone can read it. It's very much story based, but it's got like 200 reference points in there. And it looks at risk. You know, so how women see risk in a different way to men, and why a failure to actually attract and retain women, say in cybersecurity, but any industry, is actually causing us to be less safe, less profitable and less happy. So it's not just a women's problem, which it's a human problem, a people problem. This is going to help our planet to be so much more healthy and better when we get this. And coming back to like Beckie's point about the numbers and things like this, it is so much, again, from all the research that I've done since writing that book in 2016, it's always put upon the woman. This is a woman's problem. The women aren't there. The women aren't applying. And it's bullshit. It's just so not true. The women are there. The talent is there. The issue is with the hiring. That's the issue. And then supporting them to success, into those roles and beyond. So you've got hiring and then you've got culture. So those two things need to be really addressed in order to get the women in. The talent is there. The women want to, we know that. And then to get them in and then to enable them to succeed. So cultures do need changing. And again, this is for the good of the company and beyond. So that's kind of what I wanted to add to the conversation.
Thank you so much. We are really short on time. I just want to invite Charlene back because I haven't heard from her, in case you have any statements that you want to add to that, not just from a woman perspective, but obviously you do something particularly for a heritage group and for those who are unfortunately discriminated against. And we know that from kind of, what we've heard in the last 6 months. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, so I think what I've seen happen quite a lot over the last 6 months, obviously we've got the pandemic and so many women have lost their jobs, been furloughed, all sorts of stuff's happened. I've seen so many people turn around and retrain overnight. They're coming from all different industries now. So I'm getting lawyers come, accountants come and sort of say, I want to move into tech. This is something that I can do. And there are so many routes in now. It's such a fantastic time, such a great opportunity to get into tech. And the roles are there. So we're getting so many companies come to us and say, how can we hire? I'm like, well, I've got loads of women right here, ready for you. But you need to make sure that you have the right environment in place. You need to make sure that you don't focus on culture or everyone being the same. Accept people's differences, and we work with people to make sure that they can achieve that. Make sure that your job specs aren't just saying, do all of this, because most people don't need to do everything on a list. You need to do about 5 things on a list, and that's absolutely fine. And it's, some of that's making sure that the women in our network know that that's really important, that you don't have to do everything. But on the companies, you need to make sure that you're representing things correctly and that you're opening the market up to people to feel comfortable in your spaces. I've been so just shocked and happy by the amount of people who are retraining and doing so much at the moment to get into the industry. And it's definitely a thriving one. And I would definitely say move for it, because I love it personally. It's something that I thoroughly enjoy. And I'm so glad to see so many more people getting into it as well.
Oh, the issues of tech, unmuting yourself. Thank you so much. So really kind of cautious of time. I would like to end on a really positive note. So, one really quick piece of advice that you would tell your younger self, and just to kind of wrap up, also, how can people get in touch with you? Because that's just as important. Networking online is super important, and really using, and someone used that word connectivity when it comes to technology. Let's start that conversation going. So I'm just going to go in order of where I see you on the screen. So Simone, if you would like to start, please, an advice that you would give your younger self, and how can people get in touch with you?
So my advice would be 100% say yes and work it out later, and invest in your network. It's never too early to start building that network, but you've got to invest in it and make sure you pay it forward as you go along. So as you're kind of taking your different turns, make sure you are giving back. You can get in touch at Simone Roche. I think I'm the same on all my platforms, I think. And sign up please to the @powerplatform _ at the end. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. Becky?
Yeah, so my advice to my younger self would be to be aware and embrace your own natural strengths and qualities. For years, I read the books, went to the conference, went to the talks, and felt I had to be someone different to succeed in my field. But I realise now don't have to, just understand who I am and try to work that effectively in terms of communication. And one quote that I live by, it was a favourite quote of my former dad who sadly passed away at the beginning of this year, is never, never, never give up. Something that really resonates with me. You can find me on LinkedIn under Beckie Taylor, or on Twitter at rtaylor81.
Thank you. Jane?
Yeah, I think in today's age it would be get visible. So it's just like when I started out, it wasn't necessarily so much of an issue. We didn't have social media. So for today, it's just like get visible. Don't ever doubt yourself. Work on the basis that you have all of the capabilities, all of the tools, and make sure that you really build your brand, your personal brand and your voice. Get out there, get visible, and also network. Women don't invest in their network, so make sure that you are really using and working that as an asset.
Thank you. Caroline?
I love that one. I would add on to Jane's, which is continue to be curious. I know this sounds hokey, but I mean it, which is play to your curiosity. And it goes back to what Beckie said, which is your authentic curiosity, but just remain curious. And then be visible about your curiosity. Don't be shy about going to people. And the thing I've learned is that people are more willing than you think to share with what they're curious about. So it creates a knowledge. And then the secondary piece is nothing's linear. Who knew where we'd all end up? And hindsight's 2020, of course, but own that nothing's linear because the world's not linear. So things that you don't realize are a skill set will play out in the future. You just don't know how they're going to play out. So I know you talked a lot about, Sonya, kind of challenging times are the best thing to breed character and resilience, etc. But I do think they give you perspectives. I said I'm an American in the UK. It's one of my biggest strengths, was just I'm an outsider insider. I wish I could hold on to all my ideas from when I first landed in this country. So it's the world's not linear. Stay curious and play to the fact that you don't know how helpful this will be later.
Thank you so much, Charlene.
The one that I always say is that I wish I'd known that I could be my authentic self when I'd started in the industry. Going into an industry which was full of white men when I started out, before starting work, started learning to drink beer and learning to watch football. I wanted to understand the rules to make sure that I could fit in with the people around me. Turns out that rum and coke was absolutely fine, and I can watch anything I want on TV. So I would always say, be yourself. It doesn't matter if you speak differently, if you've had a different background. Embrace that and use it to your advantage, and use that to build your networks and to meet people. You're going to bring something from another perspective that's actually really, really valuable to the industry. So always, I would say, be your authentic self.
Thank you so much. Mine, just for those who would like to know, would be own your power, find your purpose, and use this to navigate your path. In a really short and snappy line, but I've been working on that whilst everyone was speaking. So that's the trick. Thank you so much for joining. All of our handles, for those who did not mention it while they were speaking, are actually in the Zoom names. For those who are watching, please do get in touch, send us your questions, connect with us online. We've all kind of, really made that clear. We do want to connect with you. Tell us what's going on in your life, how we can support. And most importantly, lean into your community, because your community is here to help. We're here to support, and we're really here to help you win in tech, and to be a winning woman or man if you're watching. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a great rest of your conference day.